So my father is a sort of blue blood, Ivy League educated, McKinsey, Merck background. And you can imagine his surprise then when in 1989, I called him and said, I've just graduated from Cornell, and guess what? I'm going to be a medical representative in Slough. I did learn to eat a good curry, but all kidding aside, it was part of a management training program with GSK, or SmithKline Beecham at the time, and I was traveling out the M4, calling on doctors, cutting my teeth in large pharma. Fast forward through nearly 10 years at GSK, the management training program, which gave me time in sales, marketing, business development, and finance. And then I spun out into Novartis, moved to Basel, lived in Italy for a while, and ultimately in 2003 turned to the sort of smaller drug development companies. And I think Stephen earlier was talking about drug development not being a sustainable business model. It's interesting. I've been now sort of nearly 15 years in the drug development industry. And one of the more recent companies I was at was a company called Intercept Pharmaceuticals, which has been until last year a drug development company, nearly $4 or $5 billion market cap last year. There are several examples of companies that create significant value over time as they're developing products. I'm very aware that some investors say, I don't want anything to do with a drug development company. I'm looking for sales and profits now. We are a different model. But I took over the company about 18 months ago after a call from Russell Reynolds. They said there's this company called Puricor. It's been around went public about 10 years ago, and they have an opportunity to be a drug development company. All of my mentors, all of my peers, and the specialist healthcare funds from whom I've raised money previously looked at the technology and said, very interesting technology, but a bit of a heavy lift. If you can sell off these non-core businesses, bring in a credible chief medical officer, get to the FDA and show us what the plan is forward, this could be quite interesting. So with that as a background, I came here. We've been talking to many folks this week at Singer and Equity Development have helped connect us with. I have two of my colleagues here, Marala Thorell, who's our CFO. She's Ernst & Young trained, been at Campbell Soup, again, very top-notch CFO. We did find Christian Peters. Dr. Peters is an immunologist trained. He's in the back there. And I brought Christian on board about 10 months ago. The goal being find a credible CMO, someone who's done it before, like myself. He was at a company called Theracos. Most of these names that I'll talk about will be perhaps unfamiliar. He was at a company called Theracos, which he turned from $300 million into $1.2 billion a couple years later, sold to Mallinckrodt, a company in the US. And from that, we have been steadily putting one foot in front of the other, taking a 10-year-old company and repositioning it. And I would say we're at the end of the beginning right now. We had a bit of a coming out party at the JP Morgan conference a week and a half ago. Every year in healthcare, the hordes descend into San Francisco. Anybody who's anybody in the healthcare industry, venture capitalists, institutions, key opinion leaders, and they sort of size up the new companies. There was a meeting attached to it, because everybody tries to be there and attach meetings to it, a meeting called the Dermatology Summit. And this was the time when I thought it was wise to spend a little bit, $15,000 to be a sponsor. Usually I don't like to sponsor things. I don't think you get much out of it. And this time, as a dermatology sponsor, as it opened up for 300 institutions, key opinion leaders, and potential partners, which is important, it said, brought to you by Allergan, Pfizer, Nestle Skin Health, and Realm Therapeutics. So as you can imagine, many people thought, who the heck is Realm Therapeutics? We had a line afterwards of people coming up to us, talking to us, and I really feel like we have the wind at our backs right now. So pleased to be able to tell you a little bit about the Realm Therapeutics story, why I think it's interesting, and why I think it's an opportunity for me to invest my sweat equity and personal equity because I bought some shares. The key asset is hypochlorous acid. I couldn't say hypochlorous acid quickly when I joined the company. Hypochlorous acid is made in your body. It fights infection. It's very straightforward. It's a chemical that's been around for many years. That said, the key piece of information that brought me, and I think, or I know, hooked Christian, was the fact that every scientist knows that hypochlorous acid kills bugs. We know that in your body, it fights infection and kills bugs. What was less widely known was that as you move up in concentration, as you make this stronger, not only does it kill bugs as an antimicrobial, but it has strong immunomodulatory properties. That means anti-inflammatory properties. So to put it simply, at a very low concentration, say about 4 parts per million, you'll find this in your drinking water. At around 100 parts per million, there are some wound care, some cleansing programs, some companies out there. That's not of interest to me, it's not of interest to us, because there's no intellectual property around that, and there's no anti-inflammatory properties at those levels. So our goal is to become the first hypochlorous acid drug company, more importantly, to have programs in the clinic that create value that we can either partner or ultimately harvest on our own. Quick slide here is just what we do with hypochlorous acid. The key special sauce that we've been able to do, because as I said, it is in your body, we've been able to synthesize it outside the body and stabilize it. More importantly, we've been able to patent that fact, the fact that it's stable outside the body, and we've been able to get granted patents for this, which is ultimately the true value in drug development companies. We have 2 programs I'll talk about tonight, very briefly, but and I can talk about afterwards, because I know we're keeping you between now and the drinks. The 2 programs will be atopic dermatitis, which is the fancy umbrella term for eczema. So if anybody has eczema, we have a product that seems to work quite well in eczema. Secondarily, I'll talk about allergic conjunctivitis, which again, the itchy red eyes that some of you may suffer from. It's a cousin of infectious conjunctivitis or pink eye. Atopic dermatitis, here's some pleasant pictures. As I've gotten to know the disease more and more, talking with the head of the National Eczema Foundation in the US, this isn't just sort of itchy skin that's bothersome. It's a severe disease that afflicts millions of people in the US and worldwide. There are some treatments currently available, which I'll talk about. There are some treatments that are coming in the pipeline, but it's a much hotter space today. I'll tell you why. Much hotter space today than it's been for years. The reason is there's huge M&A activity. I'm trying to stay away from Trump jokes right now because that will send everyone south. But there's a lot of activity. Certain things you can't say now. You can't say it's going to be great. But these are the current treatment options: steroids and calcineurin inhibitors. Steroids, because the disease is primarily in the young, is something that most parents don't want to give their children. They do work, but they do have side effects, especially if you take them for long term. Secondarily, one came out from Novartis called the calcineurin inhibitors, and they have what's called a black box, which basically means could cause cancer. So anytime you have something like that, even if it's a remote possibility, if you have a black box, it's practically the death knell of your product. And still, those products do a couple $100 million in sales. Systemic therapies, meaning an oral or injectable, are not really much of the current treatment options. Going forward, a little bit of a busy chart, and I've tried to highlight the 2 companies here that have gained the most press or analyst coverage, specifically for those who study healthcare. Anacor, Pfizer. I'm going to guess most of you have not heard of Anacor. Anacor, again, was a drug development company that had a program in phase 3, and to sort of get back to where Stephen was talking about where companies have value, there's preclinical, the early stuff, phase 1, 2, 3, and then marketed. And the value inflections can be in preclinical if you have something that someone thinks is going to cure cancer. Usually it's the phase 2 time point where that shows that it works in man. And Anacor's Pfizer was in phase 3, and last year was bought for $5.2 billion because they had a drug for atopic dermatitis that we think we're better than. So we have now signed up the people who have published, the KOLs who've published the literature on crisaborole, their product, now calling you Crisa. The key opinion leaders who have published on this are working with us due to Christians sort of co-opting and working with them, sharing the data that we have, and they literally have all 10 for 10 physicians who we've approached have said, this looks fantastic, this looks very interesting, and we're happy to put our names to it and work and help you develop the product. That's the top bolded one. The second one down here is a Sanofi product. This is an injectable. Shows interesting data, shows good data in the very, very, very severe atopic dermatitis. An injectable, which again is going to have some appeal to sort of those very, very severe types. The price point is pegged by most analysts for Sanofi's product at around $10,000 to $20,000. So our belief is that if we can come in at a price point similar to Anacor, Pfizer's product now, and since Pfizer bought them, Pfizer says, we think this is going to be a $2 billion product. If we come in around the same price point as Pfizer, which is about $500-600 as the current estimates, we'll have a better cost-effective deal than Sanofi Regeneron's product, and we believe we have a superior product than Anacor's product. The reason I have Sanofi on there, the injectable, is because they're out right now advertising in medical journals what they do and how they do, how they do it. If you step back for a second and think, would I invest in a drug development company? There's three things I'd encourage you to do if you're thinking about that. One is, does the product have a known mechanism of action? In other words, why is it working this way? Number two, do you have preclinical evidence that you think it's going to work? And number three, do you have clinical in human evidence? We have all three, and I'm going to show you briefly what we have on that front. So as I mentioned in the slide before, Sanofi has this injectable, and they're advertising all about the role of IL-4 and IL-13. So they're saying, we affect IL-4 and IL-13, and we know or believe that that is a cause of asthma in the skin. Not asthma, atopic dermatitis. Sorry about that, jet lag. Atopic dermatitis. The good news is that when you put our hydrogel on the skin, we are a topical IL-4, IL-13. So I feel very comfortable that we could go to the physicians, the parents, and say we have an alternative to this injectable. Here's again, moving from the reason why this works, the IL-4, IL-13, to some of the data. We have some preclinical and clinical. On the preclinical front, when you irritate mice and you basically create atopic dermatitis, our gel has been shown to prevent the formation of these lesions. More importantly, when you treat those lesions, so this is a second study, when you treat those lesions, you irritate the mouse, then you treat them, we've been shown to have comparable efficacy to steroids, which is one of the, again, mainstays of treatment. We ran a third study as well with other products that we think could be useful in the space, and we have comparable efficacy called JAK inhibitors, which are hot topics in the specialist field right now. The clinical experience I mentioned, we do have a product that was approved a couple of years ago at a slightly lower concentration. And with that product, we know that it works in itch. Now, itch is not healing the lesions, but is certainly a side effect associated with them. And the data that we have today shows that when you treat with our product that's a lower concentration, you can help the itch dramatically more than if you don't treat them. We have decided at this point not to continue marketing the product. We had licensed it, we've pulled it back, not to continue marketing it, because we don't want to confuse the market when we come back out with a higher strength, reformulated product. But this was doing nicely. We were selling 20,000 prescriptions. It was charging $300 for a tube. We're very comfortable we can come back out at the sort of $500 to $600, which is where Crisaborol, that product by Anacor, I know there are a lot of names here, but they're probably going to be marketing their product. But the good news here is I step back and think, why would I join a company that has risks and benefits versus another company that may have similar or different technologies? Does it have a reason to work, which I believe it does, and enough to hook Christian? Do I have a preclinical data that seems interesting? Yes, we do. And do we have any clinical data, which is rare? Because our goal is to leapfrog the phase 1 stage, to go from a preclinical company, which we've been last year essentially, and this year we're emerging as a phase 2 company. This is my favorite slide, and this is why this is an excellent opportunity to be involved in dermatology, I think to be interested in Realm, because of the heavy M&A activity. I mentioned Anacor, serious deal for $5.2 billion for an eczema gel, and by the way, it's a greasy cream that we think has some reasons why our non-alcohol-based hydrogel is more pleasing to patients, number one, and that our safety could take us even lower so that we could be used in children under 2 years of old, infants under 2 years of age. So first there was the Anacor deal. Second, there is Xiarco. Xiarco is a private UK company that was bought in December by Novartis. I know the investor, who was an early investor. This was $1 billion deal, $1 billion deal for Xiarco Group, which has a phase 2 product. And that phase 2 product had done one trial. You take a pill, and it helped the itch associated with atopic dermatitis. The third bullet on here, third slide, is Allergan bought Vitae Pharmaceuticals, a company that's right down the road from us. Vitae Pharmaceuticals also had a phase 2 trial. This time it hadn't even finished. It was in the middle of its phase 2 trial, and in August, Allergan swooped in, bought them for $750 million. There are some milestones thrown in there. And from there, actually 2 months later, the trial didn't work. So there is a lot of activity, even from Allergan, looking at us and other companies who are in this space. And I could go on. There's several other dermatology drug development companies that have this sort of $1 billion type market cap. And so when I look at where we are now, trading under cash, the company historically has been in other businesses. And my goal in changing the name, I sometimes fear when companies change a name. I think you don't want to change the name and just put lipstick on a pig. But the fact is that we sold all of the other businesses last year, and now we have cash to take us through 2 key phase 2 trials. I just spoke a little bit about atopic dermatitis, which is, I think, an incredibly attractive opportunity for many reasons. I'm going to touch on the second opportunity that we're focused on right now, which is called allergic conjunctivitis, what I mentioned earlier. The allergic conjunctivitis, the unmet medical need is that currently people are using antihistamines or steroids. People don't really like to use steroids long-term if they don't have to, same with atopic dermatitis. And with antihistamines, if we have a superior product, there's a market there. The current market leader in antihistamines is called olopatadine. Olopatadine does about $400 million in sales. And then I have one data slide, which is the next slide here, showing how we compare to olopatadine and steroids. The central red bar here is our product. The products with the blue bars with the arrows pointed to them are any competitor out there. And then this is olopatadine in the beginning, and this is a steroid. So you can see we are comparable to steroids. It's not statistically different either way to steroids. It's comparable to steroids, but it is superior to antihistamines, specifically olopatadine, the $400 million product. Very pleased to see this data. And another, again, I don't want to get too technical, but one of the benefits of dermatology and ophthalmology are that they are quick to market. I have a slide that shows some of the indications that we could be going after, but we decided to bring in some very smart folks from industry to go through and sort of boil the ocean, if you will, look at what could our technology do, what's the highest likelihood of success, the least amount of money, fastest time to market, the proper grid that a large pharmaco would look at for this. And they came up with atopic dermatitis and allergic conjunctivitis. This particular model, where you basically drops ragweed into the animal's eyes, you then treat it. And if you can get a 25% reduction, you can go from 3 to 2, 2 to 1, or 1 to 0, 25% reduction, you can get FDA approval because you're doing the exact same model in humans. I don't know of any other treatment, any other clinical design where you can take sort of the patient, if you will, induce the disease and then cure it. But this is approved. It's a standard model used by FDA, and the treatment duration, the time it takes you to get an answer, is 14 days. Meaning you start the trial and you end it. It's none of these sort of multi-year trials. Path forward in allergic conjunctivitis. For both of these products, we have to do what's called an IND, an investigational new drug application. You have to file it with the FDA so that you can run your clinical trials. That is the gating milestone for both our programs. And as I think I mentioned, I have relationships in the healthcare investment community because I've been doing this for a while, and they have all said the same things. Hire the right people, get to the FDA, and I feel like we're at that precipice as soon as we file these INDs, because then we'll be able to move directly into phase 2, leapfrogging phase 1, because of the safety and efficacy displayed. And I think was a big coup again to Christian, but also to the molecule, which we know to be more safe and more effective than your standard run-of-the-mill product that's just been tested in animals. This is my near to last slide. Some of the other areas of interest for us, we have anecdotal evidence where we have used the gel that we have approved for acne, and it works very well. We've used it for some other indications, so we know there are opportunities, but I have a commitment to focusing on atopic dermatitis right now, allergic conjunctivitis, show that these work, and help obviously drive much different valuation than where it is today, which I don't think is at all relevant to our peer group. Net cash, the last announcement we made was in October. We currently have cash to take us through both of those clinical trials, which is a very good thing. So that takes us into 2018. We have a committed group of investors. A lot of them have been with the journey a long way, and I can say they didn't like what they saw previously, but I think they are very pleased with what they've seen in the past 18 months and are very committed to staying with us. The next 12 months, very exciting for us, and I couldn't be happier to be here. I hope there's some of you who could be interested in drug development companies. I think if you're interested, I'd leave you with the note of thinking about, do you think it's safe? Do you think it works? And who really cares? And in this case, who really cares would be patients care because it is an unmet medical need, and pharmaceutical companies care, and that's why they're buying companies like these.